Hey, Lauren, we're back this week. Sorry I made us take a week off last week, but I'm in a new job. Got a lot going
Yeah.
on with traveling. So Tech Bros are back, coming to you live 2 minutes after the hour, slightly fashionably late. How's it going?
In the Tech Bro style.
Tech Bro style, yes.
Mary, how you're a vice president of marketing at a product data company now.
Product analytics.
Product analytics, sure.
Yeah.
How's it going? How
It's
what does
going
that mean? Like how
it's
does
going
that all work?
it's going great. I'll answer that question from the standpoint of a position that a lot of people are in now in data and tech where you've consulted for a while. So I did my first time ever working as a, full-time equivalent, but consulting for about 3-4 months. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about that is, first of all, you get up every day and work with the people you've chosen to work with, which is really nice. You can choose the smartest people and products to work with. So consulting for me turned out to be a great experience. I knew I didn't want to do it long term. But the other thing I've realized, and you're not a consultant, but I guess you run a consulting.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. I'm absolutely a consultant. I've been running consulting for the last 3 years.
Well, it's almost like you get to do a trial run of a company and a team. So you get to see quickly, I didn't go into any of these consulting roles thinking I'm kind of trying them out to see if I want to go full time because I didn't know what the opportunities were. I didn't know what I want. They didn't know what they want. But in the case of one of my clients where I'm working now, Qubit, I got to do a few months where I was, getting to know everyone, getting to know the product. And it's a really nice way then to enter a company. You don't start with that sort of some of those apprehensions or tensions of starting a new job because you already know the people, you know where things are headed, you have full confidence. So I would recommend to anyone actually who's job hunting and frustrated by the job hunt, because that is always a tough position to be in, just start consulting. Rather than doing, or as you're doing your applications, also maybe start consulting, and it's it can be a great way to learn to make money while you're job hunting, and then try on these companies for size. So new to the role. I'm gonna do a blog in a couple of weeks here because I have to keep up with your frenetic publication pace. I don't want you to be the only one regularly publishing.
I post like one blog a month.
You did a couple. In the
I did like 2 in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, but with some of my thoughts on the way marketing is headed. Obviously for me, it's the first time in a leadership marketing role. And I think that in tech and in marketing in general, so much has changed with the emergence of ChatGPT that I'm going to publish my own manifesto on that. So
are you going to use ChatGPT to write it for you?
Yes. Yeah. ChatGPT is powering this conversation.
Yeah, this is all, you're just actually, like, our viewers don't know this, but we're not here right now. We're just, we're in some kind of like goo. And our bodies are just sitting there.
We prompt engineered.
Yeah, we've gone full AI, full Minority Report. Where the precogs are delivering this whole thing, which is
What about you, Lauren? You're plugging away in your, I guess, running your consultancy and blogging a lot. Strong reactions to your blogs. To anyone who doesn't follow Lauren's Medium, you should. Gosh, this is just a few minutes of us plugging ourselves. We are so
let's plug ourselves. Yeah, why not?
Full on Tech Pro.
You're great. I'm great. Our viewers are great.
We have Roy from Upsolver chiming in already, saying Lauren's recent post on
5tran and S3 fiasco was a great analysis.
You
know what? Fuck it. I don't care. I'll plug myself. Yeah, like 5tran just announced they're a major vendor. They've publicly claimed $200 million run rate, like ARR. So they make $200 million a year. They're one of the Forbes Cloud 100 companies, very well known. ETL, ELT, whatever you want to call it, vendor in the space. And, I'm not, you make your own decisions about whether you like them or don't like them or the reasons you don't do or don't. Like, I don't really care. But I first used 5tran about 4 years ago. So I guess we're going back to 2019 or so. 2018. I've known him in space. I knew their original salesperson very well. I know a bunch of people who've worked there throughout the years. People who have better or worse opinions on them, and I don't know, whatever. They're a player in the space. I think every other ETL vendor does not like them, and yeah, like I made a post recently this past week because Fivetran, they host this thing called the Modern Data Stack Conference, and they had it last week in San Francisco. And what they did is, announced as a big announcement that they're now supporting S3 as a destination, which, if you're not as technical or not into the data world, S3 is like the most basic storage. It's Amazon's most basic storage service that they have. Like when Amazon Web Services started, they had EC2, Elastic Cloud Computing, and S3. And even to this day, a lot of stuff you see in the market, you might not know it, but it's built on S3 and EC2, like Snowflake and other stuff, like plenty of other services. And, what's under the hood, under it is EC2 or S3. So the fact that like they didn't support it for years and have told customers they were going to support it, and then they were going to support it, we're going to support it, hang on, we're going to support it, and they didn't. I think it's a load of baloney, and I just called them out on it. And like the reason is because by not supporting it, they force customers to push data into their data warehouse, like whether it's Snowflake or like Google Cloud platforms, BigQuery or whatever. They're forcing them to put the data in another place, and I think it's a load of baloney. And now they're after they've like what's happening in the market here is like AWS has come out with zero ETL, which they've announced, which is going to compete with like the Fivetrans of the world. Snowflake has started releasing their own connectivity. So, Stripe to Snowflake, for example, like Stripe's doing that. Or there's, Snowflake's announced like ServiceNow, like their CEO, Frank Slootman, used to be the CEO of ServiceNow. You want to get ServiceNow data over to Snowflake, they've built the connector for you. And so all of this kind of like, competes directly with Fivetran, which has been a good partner of theirs for years. And now all of a sudden that's going away, Fivetran comes out and it's their big announcement at the Modern Data Stack Conference that they're going to support S3, which has been around for like 15 years or more now as a destination. And, this is very in the weeds if people aren't, necessarily in the data world out there, but, it's you got to call baloney on things when you see them, because they've promised this for a couple of years to customers. There's public threads of them saying like, oh, it's on the roadmap for this quarter. Oh, it's on the roadmap for next quarter. It's on the roadmap. We're going to deliver it. And they don't deliver on it until it's advantageous for them, because they're playing the politics of the cloud. They're playing the politics of, whatever their venture capital investors want. And it's I think a lot of customers need to like really think about like what they're actually doing. Like I've seen in the market, a lot of customers are like, well, we'll jump the data over to Snowflake or to Redshift. And then we'll jump it to an S3 bucket for storage and for data science. Oh, then we'll jump it back over to, a different data warehouse. And so you're just jumping the same data to 3 different storage places. You're paying this vendor to do that, like for you to get that process going. And then you're paying for it a bunch of other ways. And it's just like cost efficiency stuff and like, latency stuff that's just out of control. And I called him out on it. And, I think it's a bunch of baloney. And now what they're pitching is like, oh, it's a composable OLAP. So now you can use Fivetran S3, then you can use their investors' other product to shape the data around, DBT, whatever. You can use the investors' other product, DuckDB, MotherDuck, to build this composable OLAP and basically remake Snowflake. Why? I don't know. Like, I don't really know what value that has, but it's interesting because I feel like, I'll put a pin in this little rant here, but I feel like what
It's
we're
okay.
doing here.
I think most people tune in to listen to these rants, so I'm good with it.
I think like what we're doing, it's like missing the plot. Like, why are you doing all this? Well, you're doing it to build a workflow. You're building a fraud detection engine. You're building, some kind of analytics BI platform. You're building whatever you're building for your business to make the business value. And at this point, like with the way all these consumption games work with Snowflake and BigQuery, to be, candid, and Google Cloud Platform, and with AWS, but like, you're playing these consumption games, and Snowflake's the worst of it, in my opinion. Snowflake's the worst at these consumption games, because they're publicly traded stock and it's just Snowflake, whereas Google and AWS are other stuff. We're seeing all this nonsense play out, and I think a lot of customers are finally realizing that, like, maybe they shouldn't just be taking the easiest way out. Maybe you're just clicking some buttons at the beginning and setting something up. Yeah, it gets you started, but like, now that you're a year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, maybe it's time to start, thinking about how to architect this stuff better. And, a company like Fivetran withholding a major item on the roadmap for a few years and then only delivering it, like, at the end, like, once it's economically advantageous for them, when every other of their competitors offers this, just kind of shows like how much, marketing and go to market, matter in this world, and how, like, being a thoughtful, smart engineer, you should be questioning this. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, but like, you should be questioning this stuff. So whatever.
Yeah. It's so funny the reactions here, because on the one hand we have over in the comments Florian Pierron. I imagine you're French, Florian. I don't know you, but he says, "I live for a good Lauren Ballard rant." Meanwhile, we have Irene, the guest who's about to join us. I can see her down at the bottom of the screen in our virtual studio. She just walked away. I think she was like, "I'm done with hearing." No, she's back now. But I mean, what you say, people find very polarizing. But to me, what's important about it is, again, you're shedding light on the politics behind the business, getting people to understand the financial decisions, bigger and smaller, driving all of this stuff. And ultimately, that type of transparency, also looking at bringing more transparency to the actual infrastructure and engineering happening. Transparency ultimately is good for innovation. Like, we all are in this to make money for business, but also to innovate. And like, I find that with your rants, whether they're here or on your Medium posts, a lot of smart folks are coming around and saying, let's go deeper and think on these things. So let me say hello to a couple more regular viewers, and then we will bring in Irene, our guest. Assuming you're done with your rant, Lauren.
It's not even a rant. I'm just laughing. I'm laughing at the whole thing.
Yeah,
I'm just laughing at the whole thing. It's too funny.
It's too funny. Hi to Sunny, who's a regular viewer, Sunny from ThoughtSpot, and hello to Val Goldine, who's here most weeks as well. Let's bring in Irene, who knows a lot about all this stuff too. How do I bring her up? Add to stream. Hello, Irene Bratsis. Another New Yorker. Are you in Brooklyn, Irene?
I'm in Queens now.
That's right. Okay, and Lauren is also in New York. So
nice.
Yeah.
I'm in Harlem. Good to have you on, Irene.
Good to have you. Well, good to meet you. Last event I did with Mary was Data Chatter, so it's nice.
Yeah, we did a podcast. Remember, we did a podcast with a British data recruiter.
Oh yeah.
That was awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So great to have you. I haven't spoken to you since you became a published author. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You in February, was it? You published the AI Product Manager's Handbook.
Mm-hmm. I think it launched February 28th. And then the hard launch was March 9th.
So talk about good timing. When did you I assume the publisher came to you and you said, you pitched a topic. When did you pitch this, and how did you know it was going to be timed so beautifully to the new hype cycle around AI?
Yeah, it was honestly serendipity. I didn't even pitch them. I mean, they found my articles on LinkedIn. So shout out to anyone writing articles. I started
Mhm.
doing that to get a job, to demonstrate my skills. And, I obviously, we've talked about our upskill journey, and that was one of the tools I used to make myself visible. And, it's a global marketplace at this point. So I started writing articles, and then Pact, the publisher, found them and they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, would you be like up for writing a book about AI product management?" And I said yes, because who says no to that? And
Well, I think most of us, because most people don't have the attention span to write a goddamn book, right? Like,
Well, the best part is, did you write the book, or did you have AI write the book for you?
my friends were like, why don't you use AI tools? Like AI can just write it for you. And I was like, that's not the point. The point
it's a big book. The quality is there. The writing is there. I haven't read all of it, but I know I read the parts I read. Excellent writing. Doesn't surprise me, but like, it's a serious, like 200-300 page book. Most people probably haven't seen it yet. They'll rush to buy it after this show. I'm sure it's available on Amazon, all the places. Give us kind of the thesis, the elevator pitch.
Yeah. I mean, right now we're kind of in this like era, right, of AI implementation. So it's kind of like everyone's, rushing to come to market with their AI capabilities, and so much of how companies get funding and how they position their products now is going to be centered around, well, what are their AI features and how are they kind of jumping on the bandwagon. And I've been involved in like so many events where we're talking about ethics, we're talking about, what is the responsible way, of doing this. And a lot of this is shrouded in mystery because a lot of companies obviously don't want to talk about like what models are they actually employing, what are the what's going on in the back end that's making something AI, and is it just like if else statements, because that's obviously not AI. So or it is, I mean, depending on who you ask, right? So like there's all this like confusion of terms, this mystery around it, and obviously all the hype and all the sensationalism around it. So yeah, I wanted to write a book that was very applied. First of all, it's actually looking at examples and actually looking at like, all right, what does it mean to like really manage an AI system as a product manager, and to kind of demystify a lot of that, because I came at it through the route of, all right, I wanted to be a data scientist. I did a data science program. Then I realized, okay, you're like an engineer. You're not like, first of all, you're not really calling the shots as far as like, what are you going to build? You're giving your expertise, of course, but, you're kind of beholden to like, what does your organization want to create? And then product allowed me to kind of, I guess, be more influential in terms of like, what are we creating and why? And that's one of the really foundational parts of the book is like, why are you actually using AI? Are you just doing it for the marketing buzz? Or like, is your product actually better now because you're employing AI? That's the substantive aspect of, AI product management. And that's, yeah, I just saw like a lot of issues around ethics, a lot of issues around how we're communicating, how we're going to market. And it just seemed like this is the book I want to write. This is the stuff that people don't talk about as much and is kind of behind closed doors. And that was, I mean, to me, that's the real part of the job, taking technologies and actually building them into products and actually bringing products to market that is the real work. So it's been an honor. And
yeah. No, I would absolutely recommend the book. Again, I'm not saying it's not.
Oh yeah.
It's not fitting for, I don't want to say it's not fitting for the people who watch this show who are deep in data. It is, it's good for anybody, but for those who are in tech or just, anyone else, the general public who doesn't have some of the knowledge that we have of what data science is, of the IT infrastructure behind all of it, this is the book for you. If you're like, out at dinner parties, or do people go to dinner parties anymore? Whatever people do who socialize. If you're out places in public and people are talking about AI and you feel like you're not quite fully understanding what's behind it and you want to sound smarter, get Irene's book again, because it's all that part is very well explained, because I feel like even the essentials of data science are things that, again, you need to understand to really have a grasp on AI, but most people outside our circles actually don't have that, understandably, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's why I wanted to make the book as accessible as possible, because I thought about, all right, the folks that, you know, are working in devs or are working, you know, as a machine learning engineer or a data scientist that might want to get into product, right? Because product, I mean, it's a business role, you know, it's a commercial role. So you're, you know, like the traditional pathway tends to be like a lot of people that come from engineering get into product. And that makes sense to me because, you know, so much of it is about how we're scoping and how we're managing resources and all that. So I think it's really important to have that background. But at the end of the day, you know, you're creating a product that's going to become a commercial success for your business. So, you know, people hire product managers to make sure that they do that, you know.
absolutely, yeah.
And then the other side of the equation is, okay, product managers. Now there's going to be a big pool of product managers that need to all of a sudden understand AI and understand the complexities of that. And how do they work with, you know, data scientists, and how do they work with machine learning engineers, and what is AI ML ops, and all these, you know, things, you know, like those things are already happening for traditional software products, but you know, there's still a significant part of the equation that they might not be aware of, you know. So there's a big part of the book that's, you know, catered to them.
I'm soaking in anything you say about product, because as you may have heard, I'm the VP of marketing now at a product analytics company, and I know the data side well, and I'm learning the product side, and it's so fascinating to me.
That's awesome.
Even like kind of the psychology behind it, because
Mm-hmm.
it's such different personas. So yeah, absolutely. I know Lauren's itching to ask a million questions. So
yeah, what defines a good AI product manager? And I say this from the lens of like, you know, AI is taking off. Whether you're bearish or bullish on this new wave, you really can't deny that, like, there's a lot of money coming into the space.
Mm-hmm.
Things are happening. Maybe it'll pay off. Maybe a little bit of it'll pay off here, but not over there. Whatever. There's, you know, this new job title, prompt engineer. I can't get off it. It's coming up everywhere. My favorite VC guy in the space, Matt Turk. He runs the modern, you know, data landscape of machine learning, data, AI. You know, he said, you know, the traditional path, you know, one path in life was to, you know, you study hard, you go to medical school, you slave away for many years, you know, you work your butt off, you become a doctor, and now eventually, you know, you just become a prompt engineer. Or you dropped out of high school, you become a prompt engineer. Or, you know, you're a working mom, you know, you take some time off, you raise your kids.
You join an
prompt engineer.
No, first you join an MLM, and then you become a prompt engineer.
Well, whatever. The whole point is like everyone's going to converge to being a prompt engineer. But like with all these new job titles coming up, like how do people separate like an AI product manager from a product manager who knows about AI? Or like what is a prompt engineer? Like how are all these job titles that are coming out lately like kind of fit, and how can people figure out like what, you know, if they're interested in this, like what they get into?
Yeah. Well, the prompt engineers, first of all, I mean, that caught me by surprise too. I was like, okay, 300K salaries, just to like ask the right questions. Interesting. But I mean, you know, I think the biggest difference is just understanding like the risk and how AI will impact, you know, kind of your timelining and your sense of like, okay, what is a roadmap now, right? Because if you're experimenting with different models and you're kind of in this like R&D phase of like how you're building this product, like you're going to need some familiarity to work with these technical teams in the way that you already do to work with devs and you know, to talk to them during, you know, the sprint cycles and all that. So, you know, what distinguishes an AI product manager is just like someone that understands what it's like to work with data scientists and machine learning engineers in addition to their devs, and knows how, like, what level of complexity do they need to like factor in when they're building their roadmaps for their product suite or their product. You know, I think like it certainly helps to like be reading blogs and talking to people and all that, but unless you have like applied knowledge of, you know, like you were talking about storage and storage costs, and, you know, training some of these models could take weeks or months. So, you know, I mean, it's hard. Like if you're the person that's communicating to leadership about, you know, when your launch date is or what milestones you have at what point, you know, if you're not familiar with it and you're saying, okay, yes, we're going to have this in 3 months or 6 months, and it actually takes 9 or 12, you know, that's going to just like eat away at your own credibility and cause a lot of distrust within your own organization, you know, as a product manager. You know, so much of it is like stakeholder management. So it's really hard to manage stakeholders when you don't know what's going to come up, right? And there's like a learning curve to that.
Yeah. Well, here's another one. So with the way LLMs work, and you know, what is available to multiple organizations versus what is an organization's own like proprietary model. Like, do you think AI product managers, as a, you know, as someone who's leading the charge in the space, writing about it, do you think AI product managers are going to be more focused on the model that might be proprietary to their organization, or is it going to be all about implementing, I don't know, maybe these like commodity models that are kind of available to everyone, or how does that kind of all work? And I have no opinion because like I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, like because of ChatGPT, now there's going to be like all these startups that are basically like derivatives of ChatGPT that are that is the AI that they're using. There's nothing.
It's called Y Combinator, most recent class.
Right. You know, and the other thing is like, you know, now that this is, I mean, that's the question, is like, how much transparency can there be, right? Without companies hiding behind like, oh, this is our like proprietary blend. Because to me, it's a big difference, right? If your product is based on a linear regression model, as opposed to ChatGPT or GPT-4 or 3, let's say, which is the LLM that powers ChatGPT, you know, to me, like those are very different products. Same as if your product is based on a neural network. You know, they're working fundamentally different. And, you know, that's my hope, is like, as time goes on, consumers, and when we say consumers, it doesn't have to be like every Tom, Dick, and Larry, but, you know, companies, B2B companies, let's say, hopefully part of like how they vet products that they choose to work with or partner with or use is, you know, asking those questions like, yeah, what is the foundational, you know, okay, you can tell me what kind of model you're using without giving away your secret sauce, so that I at least know what class of AI product this is, right? But there's like very little conversation about that. And like, and I know because, you know, like, you know, when I was at Tenacity, let's say, I was doing this matrix to understand like all of our competitors, and it was cybersecurity. So there were naturally thousands of them. And I was like, okay, what is AI about your product? I was trying to understand and learn based on their content that's online, what it is. And I had such a hard time even grouping them. And again, like I, as a technical person, or not even a technical person, but as someone with familiarity about models, I should be able to find out, like, you know, that's not a proprietary blend. Like we've got major areas of AI that, like machine learning and deep learning and now LLMs, like at least tell me which of the three, right? Like it doesn't have to be exact. So I hope that as we move forward, you know, because that's part of the hype cycle, right? It's like everything's, you know, shrouded in this mystery. And then as time goes on, like the consumers become more educated and they're asking more pointed questions about it. And I hope that's the direction we're moving in. And just to give you like even an applied example, like what surprised me was you remember when the Bing version of, because Microsoft bought ChatGPT and then they embedded it into Bing. And I was seeing these examples from people that were prompting Bing. And the most famous one, right, was when the guy was like, oh, Bing told me to leave my wife because it loves me more than my partner does. And, was like saying really crazy stuff. And I thought, isn't that so interesting? Because when I try out ChatGPT, it gives me very diplomatic answers, and it's actually very conservative with things that it says. And I was asking it all sorts of things, like, is there life after death? Like stuff that, philosophical stuff, just to kind of see what it would say. And it would say, well, it's not proven, and depending on what school of thought. And of course, I'm just a robot. Like, I don't have any real thoughts about this. So then I'm like, how do you go from that to like the Bing version, which is telling someone to leave their partner and like spewing all these weird emojis? I'm like, ChatGPT doesn't do that. So what did they do when they embedded it into Bing that would produce that kind of result and such a drastically different result? So I hope that as we go, we all become more educated in terms of like, what is this tech, and companies then have to be more forthcoming with, how they're actually creating these products.
We have a viewer comment here. Sorry to cut you off, Lauren. I'll just give this and save that train of thought. Ahimu, who's a software engineer, actually at Disney. I forget which affiliate of Disney. He says, I agree with Irene on what is a good AI product manager. I want to add that I think a good AI product manager knows the limits of what's possible and where to go when a limit is hit. Regardless of how cool the upcoming AI products are, they're still ultimately based on Turing machines, right? It just comes down to the software and the inputs behind them. So keeping it real there. Thanks.
Definitely agree with that.
I think here's my other question. This is just me, as a curious person, and someone who, I throw my own money around. Not that I'm some super wealthy, asshole or anything, but I invest in a little bit of stuff here and there, and I'm always curious.
I need to add investor to my titles because I feel like it just adds credibility. Like I am.
Yeah, well, you just put the word investor.
But
everybody puts the word investor and advisor in their LinkedIn.
Oh, I picked up on advisor, and that's true. Yeah, but
I'm an advisor.
We're all investors. Once you have a savings,
we're all investors. We all have.
I'm going to play around with that keyword.
And we all advise.
Yes. We all advise. I go on Twitter and just yell things into the abyss. I'm an advisor. I advise the market.
Hey, you put things into the abyss, and before you know it, you have a book contract. As Irene is
I know, right. But no, I'm curious. What when are ads going to get put in the same way? And I'm comparing this to search. So like with SEO and the way search works and ads, when are ads going to get embedded into this, or are they already there? And how do people think about that? Are they seeing Are they seeing a biased advertisement? And I think that because so much of these LLMs and everything, like the training data behind it all is already kind of like ad sponsored. It's kind of already there, even in a very bullish scenario of no, there aren't ads there, but sure, there already kind of are. How does advertising kind of play into this? And I have no idea. I have no opinion on this. I'm just very curious to hear what you think.
Well, I have a friend that uses it for work all the time, and she tells me, she's like, "Oh my God, there is not a day that goes by that I don't use it." And she's like, "Use it as much as you can right now before it gets tainted with having to pay and having, whatever, all these different ways that things will get siloed. And, it's still the Wild West, in her eyes. But I mean, your question is important because it kind of gets to the foundation of okay, so Microsoft just spent what, $10 billion on ChatGPT, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's okay, the search engine wars. But it's okay, the difference is when you're on a search engine, okay, you have ads on the left and the right? But you're looking through the pages and you are deciding as a free agent of the internet which source you want to click on.
Sure.
This is not.
But they are SEO optimized.
Right.
To,
Yeah. There's still some manipulation for sure.
Right.
But you can choose the source. You can say like, no, sure. I want my new, like whether it's news or whatever you're searching for, you can choose kind of where it's coming from. So you have some agency. If it's going to just be like now ChatGPT or whatever, Bing is now a search engine, like it's resulting in an answer for you, and no one really knows where that answer is going to come from, which source it's going to ultimately choose. And that relates to ads. Like, let's say I ask it, oh, which like air purifier should I buy? Is it going to give me a top 10 list of the best results? Or is it going to give me a top 10 list of people that have given it money to put it on a top 10 list? So, it's a fundamental question. I don't have the answer, but it is one of the things that, causes concern because, if anything, we're going from more flexibility and choice to less flexibility and choice. And ultimately, this is the flaw of these products. It's like, even though it has all this training, knowledge, and it's the most advanced language model that we've ever created, and that's all very impressive. But at the end of the day, like just to give you an example, in 2020, I was building a mental health app, which I loved the idea of. It was a mental health app where it would basically be like a diary. So you writing in your journal, and then would use natural language processing to come up with keywords, understand your mood, pick up on, like inflections and kind of understand like your sentiment behind things you were bringing up to, basically it'd be something you use for your own like introspection, or you could share it with a therapist or whatever. Right. And we thought about adding GPT-3 to it as the kind of mechanism, because otherwise you have to do all this mapping, and it's way less effective.
Sure.
But the problem was we can't put GPT-3 on a mental health app because we don't know what it's going to say, and it could, yes, they've put guardrails and all that stuff up, but as we saw with Bing, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not gonna say something.
Right. Where you have liability for it.
Exactly.
Right.
So, and like the dark side of all this is like, who's really gonna rein any of this in? Is the free market gonna do it? Is the government?
I don't think the free market is. I think the free market with a little bit of regulation can rein it in.
I thought we've entrusted Elon. We've given Elon 6 months, and it's good. We're fine.
Right. After 6 months. We're putting a pause for 6 months, and after that,
they'll come back to us with a plan.
Yeah. So these are big questions.
Some great questions in the comments, or comment first from Fred Lardaro, True Tech Bro, here every week. He says it's always been about asking the right questions of people of interest. Now we're asking some chat thing. I mean, ultimately, we've always all been prompt engineers, right? It's just a different version of it now. And then Sunny has some questions. Are there higher levels or categories of AI ethics that we should consider instead of knowing specific models? Thinking about degrees of explainability, bias, or privacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to take as like the most advanced being like the European kind of standards, because now the EU is introducing this concept of, if an AI system has the power to dictate, I don't know, what your mortgage rate is going to be, whether you get fired from a job, what your prison sentence might be if you get convicted of a crime, which, by the way, happens all the time right now.
All that's happening.
All the time. So nothing's really, I guess, unless there's a PR crisis or whatever, I wouldn't say that any company is being proactive about it. So yeah, they're introducing the system that like, if an AI system has the capacity to have this immense influence over people's lives, they should be held to a higher standard than, say, an AI system that is making portraits of you for $17, right? Like, those should not be classified in the same terms as AI systems that are exactly the same. They're not. We don't have that level of hierarchy in the US. We barely have data protection policies. So, right now it is a wild west, and it will continue to be without significant pressure. And I've done events where people that are like way more knowledgeable than I am about it will say like I'm not optimistic about it because we have legislative bodies that still ask Facebook how they make money. So clearly, like, we're not in a position to even have people that are that have the qualifications to actually, make these calls, right? So it looks very dire. I don't think that's going to necessarily be true all the time, but certainly right now it is. So yeah, more information is better than less information. All of us, consumers, business owners, product managers, we should all be thinking about these things, because this is arguably one of the most impactful thing that any of us are going to experience in our lifetimes. This is like getting electricity.
You think I'm going to use GPT as the example as a consumer-facing model. Do you think that'll be embedded everywhere in the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft Office is embedding it. I think what's going to end up happening is, because I saw an article that was like, well, OpenAI, makers of ChatGPT, like, it's in their interest for this to like have the like marketing splash that it has, and for people to be like, is it sentient? Which is like my favorite and least favorite topic about this. But it's in their interest, right? This is like giving them a bunch of marketing buzz. I think in the end, like, as we continue, we're going to notice the limitations of it more and more. And we're not going to like treat it like this miracle thing. Cause like, yeah, it is miraculous. It's all of humanity's like books and articles and movies and everything has been thrown into this thing. It is miraculous. But at the end of the day, like, it's just regurgitating stuff we've already created. Like, we are actually the creators. So it's interesting, but I don't know if it's going to be in every product. I think the hype is going to go away at some point.
Roy has a great question on that note. This is a tough one. How do you see content attribution working in this space? If ChatGPT uses my content in its model, how will I know that? And how will I be acknowledged that my content was used in the answer?
I don't think you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think you will.
I mean, it's using all of everybody's stuff now, right? As far as we know.
Where does it even begin to give credit?
It's using Samsung's stuff. We know that.
Right, I saw that.
Well, it's like
generously sharing their confidential information.
And ironically, that might be where like data privacy laws actually do get traction, is like companies being like, oh no, wait, our employees use this. We should have data privacy.
It's like, is the internet a public utility? And if you think it's yes, then when you post stuff on there, like, people are gonna take it and use it, like, for whatever. Like,
yeah.
Mary, we gotta have a whole episode on alt data at one point. I gotta get some of my alt data people on here.
Yeah, I don't even know what alt data means. I don't even know what that means. We'll invite you back, Irene. You can.
No, it's all the people who take all this data already and sell it to hedge funds and ad brokers.
So. Like, yes, I want to do that show because I have a lot of thoughts actually on. I didn't know that was a term, but I have a lot of thoughts on that. But a couple of weeks ago we had Michelle Yee on, who started her career at IBM Watson, and like you, Irene, a great brain on AI, one of the actual experts on it. And we were talking about how the fears people are expressing now around AI, were those the same, or were there similar fears expressed around the rise of the internet? And we didn't know the answer, but I was researching a little bit yesterday, and even pre-internet, into the early 80s, the term computer phobia was like a thing, just like that ongoing fear of computers. So I think it's important historically that we just sort of keep in mind, how people have reacted to technology throughout the ages, knowing that this, yes, is a uniquely different thing. One of the thought leaders back in the time, one of the specific fears that was addressed was so funny to me. It was the undo button. And someone wrote this whole like essay that they published, I think it was in The Atlantic, about how as human beings we're used to taking an action, and then the action has consequences. And what is it going to mean for humanity when suddenly you can just undo your actions? Which clearly, we have survived the undo button. But to me, it's fascinating to look back and see, apprehensions have been around this stuff. And I think that now actually the fears are not widespread enough, that there's too much of embracing this movement without understanding what's behind it, which is why you should read Irene's book, and then not understanding that there are many guardrails we can put on this, that we can do it responsibly, we can do it ethically, and that there are people whose expertise we should be tapping into to do that. And it's not the tech pros, it's the AI ethics experts.
Yeah, and the fears are kind of misplaced, you know? It's like, you shouldn't be worried that AI is sentient. You should be worried that AI is being employed already in invisible ways in every area of your life, and you don't know it. That's what you should be worried about.
Like ChatGPT is just the consumer-facing big thing that they put out to be consumer-facing and make the buzz about this. There's already AI stuff that's been around for years that people just don't think about.
Like the famous case of Amazon's job, you know, AI, what are they called? Those resume scanners.
Right.
You know, like the real thing to be concerned about is like bias in training data that's used to train AI models.
But wasn't the model selecting only, say, white dudes, because that, according to their data, are the people who historically have held those roles they're recruiting for. So just basic enforcement of bias that in theory we're all sort of supposed to be working against.
So it was suppressing like resumes of women that were applying for engineering roles. And, you know, it was used for quite a while before that became, that was flagged. And, you know, there was a public kind of, and to Amazon's point, like they did address it and they did, you know, talk about it and they took ownership of it. But still, it's like, okay, how many people didn't get a job for a year because you used that? What are we doing to do that? You know?
Right.
So
yeah. To me, the worst is rent. You know, like ProPublica did a great piece back in October about how in big cities, you know, apartment complexes are all using the same software to optimize rental prices. I think it's called RealPage. I'll have to look it up. But as a rent, I rent a place. I'm in no way in a financial position to not until I become an investor to buy a place of my own.
That's how you lose money, Mary. Don't invest in tech.
And although I do live in Los Angeles has a decent rent control. I live in a rent controlled place, but for most people, their rent is being optimized by this. All the landlords have access to the software telling them exactly how much they can squeeze out of potential residents every time their lease renews every 12 months. I mean, and that's been going on for a long time. There's nothing new about that. And I don't think the public has any awareness of that. I do think if there was awareness, they might not riot because we're not French, but they'd at least be angry about it. Right.
Yeah. Well, and companies like BlackRock certainly use modeling to understand where to buy property.
Oh, yeah.
And how to basically take away options from like actual people. So
yeah.
Well, it's the same as like I'm actually really interested in like the implications for all this fintech stuff. So, you know, if any fintech people are on the line, like you can come debate me or talk to me about this. But you know, most of fintech, in my opinion, is just it's not really tech. It's just charging interest to people who and taking risk for doing so, but charging interest to people and businesses and entities that are not served by the traditional banking system. So your credit score is too low, or you're too risky of a business because you're just starting out, or whatever. And so fintech fills that gap, and they do it, subsidized by equity from venture capital, convertible debt turned into equity for cash stakes and this stuff. And that's what fintech is. And you can call it tech, but like really that's, and there are apps and stuff, but that's really what it is. And I'm really it's not really, I wouldn't say worried, just more interested in like how all of this is going to get factored into, these types of models. Cause a lot of them, like, sure, like they'll use Experian or they'll use, TransUnion or any of the, same things that the big, financial houses use. But like, they're doing other stuff with it to figure out, who gets charged a rate, who gets a loan, who gets, to rent a building. whatever. And I'm really interested in how this plays out, not just from a B2B perspective, but like, because I think most of these companies like end up folding, these fintechs, unless they're in direct payments like Stripe or IDEN or something, like most of them fold eventually. If you look at the data, you'll see that. More interested in the consumers and what this means for the consumer. And how these like models are going to impact like fintech, or what we call fintech today.
I have a chapter in the book that talks about the research, and in because I wanted to highlight like what are companies like McKinsey and Deloitte and the big research Gartner and everybody saying. World Economic Forum has a number of like special reports on AI and all that stuff, and I think because there is a lot of fear around it, and again, there should be. Like, this is happening. I used to work at Experian. We had a profiling tool where any company that bought it would know information about you based on your cookies data, and this is like not a secret. This is how it's called Mosaic. So they'd know information about your income level, your all sorts of status markers, so that they could optimize their price, offer you certain options, and that was 12 years ago, so
right.
10 years ago. So imagine where things are now, right? And I think when it comes to talking about like classism, racism, sexism, homophobia, all of it. If we don't correct or introduce mandates that all companies have to assess their systems for bias and cannot use bias systems, unless we do that, it will further inequality, it will further racism and sexism and all of that, right? So it's a unique tool because like what you're describing, it's already happening. And sure. Like if it's not reined in, right, then it's going to make everything worse. And that's what all the research shows, right? Like it's not even on the individual level, it's at the country level, it's geopolitically as well, it's at the company level. So companies that use AI will outperform companies that don't. Employees that use AI will outperform employees that don't. Countries that use AI and make it a priority will outperform countries that don't. So it's kind of happening at a mass scale. And I think that like also poses the unique opportunity too, because let's say we have this systematic thing that's affecting everything at scale. And if we do introduce measures to at least limit bias, what an impact that would have on our society overall. If we could limit bias so that systems that are trained on data, because the data is biased. Yes, you're going to have to manipulate the data so that it's not biased because life is biased. So yeah, like it's a manipulation in favor of equality. But if you don't do it, it's going to make everything worse. And if you do it, it's going to make everything better. So it's, I mean, that's the point. That's the point of this whole talk.
Well, that's the ethical, or some would say progressive view, and not everyone would agree with that, right?
Well, I think everyone could agree that bias systems harm people and that the bias is the thing we're fighting. Like whether you're progressive or not, no one can say like, oh yeah, there's bias. This is clearly lowering the rank of, people of color or women, and then say, we stand by it.
I think I honestly think a lot of people.
I mean, yeah, nowadays
I think a lot of people don't care. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like I've been immersing myself a little bit because I feel like I've had to in like the Elon type world, and I don't think that a lot of the people at the top are thinking or truly care about this stuff.
Well, they want.
Well, the question here is like, what's the IRR or the revenue returns, or like what's the return on capital expenditure? And if it is only giving out more favorable loans to, I don't know, white people versus, Latino people or something, the question is, all right, do you regulate that? And if you deregulate it, how do you regulate it? Because this is just these models that are trained on, the fucking open internet, which which is all kind 10 kinds of racist already.
When you have in the US, we have a population that most people still aren't aware of the realities of, like redlining and bias and historical and until today bias, against Black people in issuing mortgages. If we don't even have that awareness, then how can we expect people to know and care about this, which does take a higher level of technical maybe understanding.
I don't think any of this can be regulated. I think the horses already left the station. Is my own opinion.
Well, there are companies that are companies that debias algorithms and there are like I said, the EU is introducing categories of AI systems. Like, I don't subscribe to the idea that like, well, it's already out of the bag, there's nothing we can do about it, because like then what's the point of anything? What's the point of working? What's the point of creating anything? If there's no belief that something can get better, that's really nihilistic. That's really depressing. And
that's our general editorial line.
Do you regulate it? Do you regulate? So there's companies out there, to your point, that are like addressing this. Is it empowering these companies through the free market, or is it by government regulation?
But there is no government regulation.
Yeah, that's my point. There's no government regulation.
No.
And I don't think.
It's the honor system.
Right. Right.
So we need to find new ways of influencing behavior, influencing the behavior of companies, and it has to be mandated. It has to be something that's coming from legislative bodies. Otherwise, the free market's not going to do it. Why would they spend more money to make their AI system more ethical if it's serving the people that pay them?
I mean, I profoundly agree with you, but I'm also profoundly nihilistic on all of this stuff.
I'm a huge nihilist. So I've got money under my mattress, gold buried in the backyard.
Nihilistic or realistic? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I do a monthly series called Why Talks with Women in AI, and I moderate those discussions. And I had a woman from Meta that joined last year, and I was talking about this with her, and I was like, okay, you work in policy, AI policy at Meta, so what's your stance on how you feel about this? Like, you must be inundated all the time with stuff that probably bugs you out. And she said, fundamentally, she said, and this was a woman that was part of she used to be a lawyer against stop and frisk policies in New York City. She used to be an educator. Like, so much respect for this woman. And she said, I'm a fundamental believer that AI is going to help us solve the biggest problems we have. And I think that's very important, because for someone that could be very nihilistic and could say, I've been fighting the system in different ways, and she said at one point, she's like, the fundamental question is like, do you try to fight things from the outside, or do you jump into the belly of the beast and try to help from inside? I'm always going to be like a believer in, like, there's always going to be people that do want to do the right thing and want to use their time and energy to make the world a better place. And ultimately, like, it's not fair to say this technology is just going to make everything worse and we're just going to become slaves to the machine now. No, that's not true. I think we can use it in ways, and the scale of it alone can help us make progress in ways that we couldn't. It's just a matter of, changing the dialogue, and you can't change the dialogue without more people knowing about it. So that's it. I mean, whether I'm wrong or not, we have to at least believe that it's possible.
Yeah. Sure. No, I absolutely. And again, that's what you're doing a lot of work towards that. I think we, in our own modest way, are trying to do that as well.
You have a show where you're talking about these concepts all the time, and people that are followers of it. And, we can't just, it's easy to be like, oh, I'm not really doing anything. You know, I can do that and have done that all the time. But at the same time, like, you are impacting and bringing a platform to these discussions. And if you weren't doing it, then the people that watch your show all the time might not find these conversations and their actions that, you know, I mean, we don't live in a vacuum. Like, we all impact each other all the time.
Sure.
Yeah, more than ever. We got to end because we probably all have meetings to go to. This has been great. I wanted to give a shout out to another book, actually. Irene, when I first met you a couple of years ago here on LinkedIn, it was in a book club that you were reading, and the book was My Introduction to AI, which was AI Superpowers.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
China, Silicon Valley, and the New World Order by Kai Fu Lee. Excellent book. And again, that's a whole other discussion. Like, we're so focused on ChatGPT and our own LLMs and stuff that we haven't been talking about. Like, where's China and all this?
Yeah, they're going to be the AI superpower by 2030.
I mean, they've got a heck of a lot more data just by the power of their people, and it's, you know,
and TikTok.
And TikTok, yes.
Well, Irene, where can people find you, and like where plug yourself for a minute. Where can people find you and interact and learn more about you?
Find me on LinkedIn, add me, message me. I love LinkedIn, so
do you want to give a quick shout out to your day job?
Yes. I'm a director of digital product and data at IWBI, International Well Building Institute. We are a wellness standard that's applied to buildings and, you know, impacts things like building materials, mind concepts, community concepts. A bunch of Fortune 500 companies basically will use our standard to certify themselves. So that's my day job. I'm also New York City chapter co-lead of Women in Data. I organize events in New York City. So if you are in New York, or if you know people in New York that might want to be speakers or come to our events, please let me know and connect me with them. I also moderate Y Talks with Women in AI. So I'm always looking for speakers for that. Those are online. So yeah, look out for those. And if you follow me, and I'll post about all that stuff. And I also moderate a book club, which is how I met Mary. And I call it Data House, but it's with Women in AI. So I'm sorry, it's with Women in Data. But I do have like the Data House LinkedIn group. So if you're not a part of the Women in Data community and you want to come to book club, yeah, you'll find that on my page as well. Please read books with us. I love book club. So
TLDR, find Irene on LinkedIn. You'll get all that information there, Irene Bratsis, and absolutely go buy her book. So thank you both. This has been excellent. I'm feeling a little depressed, but these are the conversations we have to have.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much, Mary and Lauren.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.